Hey guys, T here. Today I got to look at the Tirpitz for you, the Tier 7 Premium German Battleship. It's the reward ship for the current campaign. You can see I have a Celiax build there on the screen for you. We'll talk more about the commanders as we go along here. I wasn't inclined to buy the Tirpitz early. I was going to grind out the missions, which is far more cost effective. But those of you that were watching the stream saw that I had a little bit of a snafu, inadvertently purchased the ship, and was unable to obtain a refund to reverse the purchase. So I was pretty upset at the time about that. But a couple people pointed out strategies to me, which I think are good ideas. Number one, if you carry excess doubloons like I was doing, then you're not going to necessarily get a prompt to confirm a purchase. So if you just purchase the doubloons at the time you're trying to buy whatever it is you're trying to buy in the game, that'll act as a check against inadvertent buffoonery such as mine. And in terms of the Admiralty backing, you can just hold off and purchase that at the end of the campaign. That'll allow you to see how far along you are. And if you've completed all the missions, then you'll just be paying the $10 cost of the Admiralty backing. If you haven't completed the missions, then you'll get a far more accurate view of how much the ship will actually cost you at the time. And that'll allow you to weigh the decision a little bit with more information. So both good ideas. That's all I'm going to say on the matter. I'm just going to move on and we'll go along from here. Now at this point I've played about, I don't know, 8 to 10 games in the ship. Just looking at the stats, again we don't have like an armor view or anything, but just in terms of raw numbers, it's comparable to the Vanguard in terms of armor and armaments. 4x2, 380mm guns, which is just 1mm shorter than the Vanguard, and 19 to 360 millimeters in the armor, which is 16 to 356 in the Vanguard. So in terms of how you're going to want to play this, for the most part it's going to be a little bit of a higher skill ship. You're going to have to definitely focus on angling and firing the proper shells. Now that's something I'm still working on. I'm inclined to try and fire AP as much as I can in these battleships, but in this one I'm finding, at least early on, that if you're dealing with angled targets, rather than trying to punch through, you can have a little bit more success with HE. HE is not going to do a lot of damage. You got 4,400, which is significantly lower than the other ships. But that being said, and it's still going to be a better option than just cracking your shells on the armor, on the angled armor, or bouncing. I think a lot of people going into this were expecting to spec the Tirpitz out as a heavy-duty secondary build. The base secondary range on this is 5.5, I believe, and the Bismarck is 7.5, if I recall correctly. So in terms of doing the secondaries are definitely effective when you get into range of people. I don't think I would spec it out with that in mind. I'm finding a lot of success with the ship, kind of like medium long range, 10 kilometer, 12 kilometers, something like that, at least early on. As the enemy team thins out a little bit, then you can decide to push, and it's dependent on the map as well in terms of where you want to be positioning the ship. It's got the typical German accuracy, so the guns at long range aren't particularly accurate. Initially I was running Takagi as my inspiration on Celiax, which increases the HP regen. I'm switching that over to Cunningham. I don't have a second inspiration on the ship at the moment, but I wouldn't probably recommend just charging in and trying to duel close range with the ship early on. It's not armored in a way that's going to be effective. You do take a fair amount of citadels in this ship, unlike the Scharnhorst, which to this day I don't know if I've been citadeled in it. It's possible, but that ship you're really only going to be citadeled at long range, at like max range, with plunging fire through the deck. This one I've been taking a fair amount of citadels. I mean, most of it's just on me for bad angling at the time, but whether those citadels are coming from below the turrets or the water line, I'm not 100% sure. But this is not, some invincible ship, so you can see taken some shots already and had some damage applied to us in this game. But going against Amagi's Iowas, you definitely need to play this like the Vanguard and really focus on your armor angling. Now the guns do reload really quickly. I believe my 4-slot mod is the one that increases reload time and decreases traverse. Traverse speed on this is really good, so I'm not finding that to be a problem. Mod 1, I have aiming systems mod. Again, I think some people are going to be tempted to put the secondaries mod, which increases your range and I believe reload by 20%. Aiming systems mod has a modest 5% boost to the secondaries, but I'm finding that increasing the accuracy of the main guns is going to be more helpful. The way I'm thinking about it is this: the secondaries are going to go off in certain situations. The main guns are going to go off in all situations throughout the entire game, so I'd rather have those working as optimally as possible. And the secondaries will come into play when they come into play. Torpedoes on this, you have 2 launchers, one on each side, 4 torps per side. They have the potential to do 13,700 damage. 6-kilometer range, 64 knots in the water, so that's pretty typical. That's the same stats as the Scharnhorst has. So again, you're not going to want to, in my opinion, you don't want to force the situation with the ship, but they definitely come into play when you do find yourself in close quarters battles. And I've had a couple of games where we've gotten the torps involved. I think the second bonus game that I'll show after this one has at least 1 torp strike, if I recall it correctly. Now you can see you can get some decent damage with this ship. You're able to punch through citadels. I'm still experimenting with the guns. I'm kind of playing it like the Vanguard, where against heavily armored ships you're going to want to maybe shoot upper hull into superstructure, and you'll be getting a fair amount of damage that way. Cruisers, you can shoot for the waterline. I mean, to me, the guns perform similar to the Vanguard, which isn't surprising given the nearly identical stats on the paper, at least. You know, if you're shooting at the right part of the ship, I think the penetration, the damage is fine. It does a good job there. The dispersion obviously is what it is. That's kind of the hallmark of the German battleship line. So, again, you definitely do not want to be sitting back doing your best Iowa impression, shooting max range. I think that's going to be kind of the key to playing the ship. That's my early impression, at least, is kind of finding, maintaining the correct position in terms of distance from the ships. You want to get close enough that you're going to be hitting enough of the shells into the targets to be doing consistent damage. Not so close that you're, putting yourself in position to be taking fire from a lot of different angles. Because if you're not angling properly, you're going to get pretty severely damaged in this thing in short order. But all in all, I think it's a fun ship. I haven't had any barn murders of a game yet, but 100, 120, 130, I've had a fair amount of those. I've been getting a lot of like dreadnoughts and some of the other defensive medals. So again, well, in terms of tankiness, I think it's 69,399 on my build for HP, which is higher than the Amagi, lower than the Iowa, lower than the Vanguard. So tankiness isn't necessarily there in terms of the HP, but if you're angling your armor properly and maintaining good positions where you're not taking a lot of crossfire, then the potential to tank damage in that manner is definitely present. So, all in all, I do enjoy the ship. I think it'll be a good reward. I think you're going to... The thing about Tier 7 premiums is, a lot of people are against them, like Tier 10 premiums in World of Tanks, because the fear is that it's going to allow new players that aren't familiar with game mechanics to play at a level of game that they shouldn't necessarily be playing at. That's a fine argument. I mean, to get the ship, you're going to have to play a fair amount. I mean, I guess you can just buy it outright. Which, so, I mean, from that perspective, that kind of supports that argument. But you're not going to have a lot of success in the ship if you don't understand the core game mechanics. Armor angling, shell selection, positioning, stuff like that. If you are managing those aspects of the game properly, then you can do just fine in this, and I expect to, as I get a little bit more experience, have a lot more success with this ship. I'm going to skip to the end of this. We'll show the results screen. I'm going to point out this Amagi at the bottom of the map there. That's not how you play in Amagi. That's not how you play anything. But this match goes on for 3-4 minutes, so I end up just chasing this New Orleans around the island, and then when I get around it, I ended up killing him. So that first game, I just kind of want to give you an overview of the ship in terms of stats and general opinions. This next match, we'll kind of take a look at the game itself. It's a match on the map Neighbors. I think this was my second game of the ship, so still kind of feeling it out. Most ships, I mean, you're not going to really start running in at, I guess, max capacity or efficiency or whatever you want to call it, effectiveness, until you get a good feel for it, and I'm still kind of doing that with this ship. Talking about the commanders, though, briefly, I think I'd give a strong look for Von Hipper in this one if I had him. Again, Celiax is kind of spec'd out for that close-range brawling role, which, if you want to go balls to the wall, secondary build on this, you can do it. I'm not going to talk you out of it. Go ahead and try it. For me, my early impressions are kind of medium to medium long range is going to be the sweet spot for the first half to 2/3 of the game, and then kind of closing in after that as the situation allows. So I haven't given a strong look at Von Hipper just because I don't have him, but I believe he's kind of spec'd out more for that medium to medium long range build that I'm describing. So here you can see I fire HE off the bat. That's just because I had it loaded from whatever the last match was. I was probably trying to kill a destroyer or something. The two things you want to do right off the bat: check the enemy roster to identify ships that you need to be paying attention to, and double check your ammo. So that happens to me a fair amount lately. I've just been kind of sloppy checking the ammo. And, it's not the end of the world, but that could have potentially been a lot stronger of a salvo had we had the AP loaded with that broadside Vanguard coming through. Now in this northeast spawn here, I'll play towards the east more if I have a ship like the Tirpitz that has good speed. This one has 35.5 on my build, so it's actually the fastest battleship on my chart at tier 7. If you're playing something like a New York or, American Dreadnought style, you need to be careful about pulling yourself off to the wings of the map like this, because you're going to find yourself out of position for the rest of the match pretty easily once you've cleaned your side up. But again, because the Tirpitz has the maneuverability and the speed to get in and out of positions relatively quickly, then I'm not worried about that situation propping up here. So here we got this Jervis closing in. We do have the AP loaded. It's at the range where the secondaries would be going off, and that would probably finish him off had the shots not landed, but we're able to kill him with the main guns. I'm expecting torps launched, or I'm reacting as though they're there. This early in the game, if you want to think about it, he probably launched some torps right off the bat. A lot of destroyers will get into range if someone launch them right away, and then not have them available for a while. Destroyers, the more I play with them, the more I'm trying to hold on to the first salvo and watch where the play develops, because the ships are going to sail roughly in a straight line to get into whatever position they're in, and then they're going to start turning and angling and reacting to the situation as the enemy ships are spotted. So if you do a early salvo that is aimed at a ship that hasn't really gone on to step 2, then you're almost always going to miss that salvo. Had he had that one available, he could have potentially come around there and killed me, but that didn't end up being the case in this situation. So you can see all the ships that are available now on the map are roughly at the far end of my firing range. Again, that's not going to be the sweet spot for the ship. This particular game, I had my Takagi build as an inspiration on this one, so Cunningham wasn't even a factor in this, so the dispersion is going to be a little bit less than the previous game that we just kind of showcased in the background there. But you'll get a good idea of what the ship's like firing at range. I don't know. We don't really have great access to the accuracy numbers at this point in time. But I feel like this ship's a little bit more accurate than the Scharnhorst. Maybe that's just my imagination or whatever RNG had encountered so far this morning. But, you know, it's not wildly... Well, maybe let me rephrase it. I mean, it's still pretty inaccurate at long range, but it seems to be slightly less inaccurate. But, again, I don't want to sign on to that position as that being 100% true at this point in time. But, you know, I'm moving forward to these ships. Now, they all are moving away from me in general, but if these ships are going to be giving me broadside, I'm not going to have a problem shooting at them. You can see here I'm aiming a little bit above the waterline. That's both in anticipation of him moving away slightly. It looks like this Vanguard's going to turn out of that, although we do clip him with one Citadel. But the more I'm playing this, the more, like, until you get into closer range where the AP penetration values are going to go up, maybe that upper hull into the superstructure shot's going to be more efficient. Now with battleship guns like this that have a lot of dispersion on the shots, you know, like in Iowa, for instance, if you just aim waterline and you have Sims piloting the thing, those are going to be fairly accurate and you're going to hit those waterline citadels a lot. If you aim up just a little bit on the ship, or on the shot with these ships, you're going to have that built-in dispersion anyway, so you might still be clipping those waterline shots, but you're just more likely to hit something on the ship. So that's something to consider. Now, evaluating the game at this point, our western flank seems to be kind of evenly matched with theirs. We don't have any ships in the center that are able to crossfire these, but their eastern flanks and central flanks are kind of collapsing into a ball in the center. So had we been a little bit more spread out in terms of our battle line, then we'd be able to get a lot of crossfire shots. So I don't really like to see teams that clump up like this. It makes it very hard to defend yourselves from multiple angles. But because we're, you know, advertently or inadvertently, I'm not sure, kind of clumped up on the north here, we're not able to punish them that well at this point. But they are showing a fair amount of broadsides anyways, so if the enemy's going to present those shots to you, then you might as well go ahead and take them. We do have a destroyer that's in there. You did see that torpedo strike, by the way, that I was referencing earlier. So keep that in mind if you close within range of a Tirpitz. It definitely has the potential to torpedo, or if you're piloting the Tirpitz, you can definitely use those torps. But again, I wouldn't go out of your way to push just to get the torps going. Use them situationally, and you'll have a lot more success with those. Now, I was going to say about that destroyer we have pushing down there. That's fine as long as he's remaining undetected, keeping the gun silent. I'm not sure what type of destroyer that is, but the problem with pushing that aggressively far forward is once he gets detected either by plane or just getting too close to the ships by accident, there's no one there to be able to support him. So as a destroyer, that's a pretty risky play. You can get away with kind of solo action, stealth, ninja type operations in certain destroyers, so I'm not discouraging anyone from doing that, but you do have to be very careful with how you do it, and that guy ends up getting spotted and being eliminated here in fairly short order. Now we did, for whatever reason, that ship that we torped wasn't able to heal the flood, so presumably someone caused a fire on him, and we're able to flood him out. So that puts us up, 115k. Again, this is a fairly average game, at least in terms of how I've been performing in the ship so far. If you had one game to save your life to get like 200k damage, I don't think this would probably be the ship. I'm not saying you can't get really high games in terms of damage, but just due to the gun characteristics, I think really high damage games are going to be more of an outlier as opposed to the norm. I suppose you could say that about every ship, but I don't know. I kind of find the ship to be like a slow, steady grinder that if you're playing it well, you'll kind of just gradually accrue damage over games as opposed to landing several knockout type shots. You know, devastating strike type shots. And now that our team has secured that western flank, we are able to create some of those crossfires I was talking about earlier, where there's a battleship down there pressuring these guys, and we have ships to the north here that are pressuring as well. So they're no longer able to angle against everyone. And at that point in time, if you're playing in a ship in a defensive position like that, you're forced to just kind of choose who's the bigger threat to me at the moment, and then you have to angle to them and just accept the fact that you're going to be eating some damage in your sides from other angles. So there's a lot of reasons to not collapse into a ball in terms of an overall team strategy, but that's the biggest one. It's impossible to effectively defend yourself against incoming fire. Whereas if you're spread out, that's going to force the enemy to kind of focus on a lot of different things and, you know, kind of pick and choose individual targets, which is going to allow you to identify who's actively fighting with me at the moment, and then you can angle against that ship. So all in all, I like the Tirpitz. It's a fun ship, and I'm sure a lot of you guys will enjoy it once you get it unlocked. So I hope you did enjoy the video, and if you did, please hit the thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing. I got a lot of World of Warships coming all the time. Questions for me, comments, leave them below. Love to hear from you guys, and we'll see y'all later. Alright, peace.